Now, please welcome Madeline Yong in her speech, Understanding the Food We Eat and the Dark Side Behind It All.
Hi everyone, my name is Madeline Yong and I am currently a sophomore at UCVTS's Academy for Allied Health Sciences. And today I'm here to talk about food cravings and the science behind it. So now let me ask you all a very important question. What do you think of when you hear the word pasta? For me, when I think of the word pasta, I think of the 4-cheese mac and cheese with honey garlic and chicken tenders, pasta from Applebee's, which is my go-to order. And I ordered it every time I go to Applebee's without fail. Now, let me introduce 3 common cravings and what is said about you if you have these cravings. So the first craving we have is baked goods. So this could be brownies, cupcakes, cookies, muffins, all that. So if you have a craving for these baked goods, then apparently you're tired, you're exhausted, and you need a break. Does that sound familiar? Or if you have a craving for spicy food like spicy ramen, then you're an adventurous person but lack the excitement in your life to continue on with your adventures. And perhaps you turn to this spicy food to cope with this boredom in your life. Or third, maybe you have a craving for crunchy food, which may be chips, it could be fried things like that. So if you have this craving for crunchy food, then apparently not for me. You're an irritable person, you're easily angered, and you just want to snap at someone. But from personal experience, you know you can't always snap at someone that you get angry at. So you instead crunch on these munchy chips and kind of soothe your anger. Now, let's talk about the simple science behind food cravings. So generally, most cravings are high in fats, sugars, salts, and energy. And the cravings I listed before are examples of this. Now, when someone has a craving, they may announce that they're hungry or things like that. But we must differentiate these 2 terms, hunger and cravings. Now, hunger is a feeling that can be soothed by just eating something as long as your stomach feels fulfilled. However, if you have a craving, that is very different. Cravings are highly intense and they are specific and can be only solved by eating your specific craving. So essentially, you can't really solve this craving unless you eat the food that you want. Now, these 2 things can happen simultaneously, but a lot of people do confuse these and say that they're hungry while they're just craving something specific. Now, there are many different aspects involved in food cravings. Physiologically, it generates saliva in your mouth and it prepares your brain for eating by setting up that reward system. Let's say you have a Chick-fil-A fry and you're about to eat it. Just imagine the crispy, salty fry. So delicious, right? As you slowly bring it into your mouth, before you even bring it into your mouth, you already have this feeling of satisfaction just before you even have it in your mouth and before you even taste it. But you seem like you can taste it because you can taste things with this feeling of satisfaction. And this may be the reason why you can kind of feel, or maybe you're imagining a pizza and you already feel that amazing tomato sauce. Does anyone feel that? I do. Well, now let's talk about more about food cravings. So food cravings, they are very specific, again, like I said, and they also have an incredible way to make your brains extremely, extremely focused. And this can give you a great memory. I mean, if only I had this memory for school, maybe I'd be excelling in my classes, which I'm not. But, that would be a great thing. My parents often joke that for me to remember a specific vacation, I need to eat something extremely exceptional. For example, I don't remember Montreal for its beautiful churches or elegant basilicas. Instead, I remember Montreal for its delicious smoked meat and its fresh, warm bagels. So when you go to Montreal, check out the food before, the landscapes and all that. But my parents, oddly enough, may be on the right track. They, along with the Pavlovian model, explain that essentially when food is involved in a specific place or specific location or situation, just being in that specific location or situation is going to trigger the craving. And even unrelated things like shapes or objects can also trigger the craving. I mean, for me at least, I remember a square is like flat bread pizza. And a triangle, a slice of pizza. What about a circle? You got it, pizza. Or maybe it's just me, I'm not too sure. Do you guys think of circle as a pizza pie? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, this is something that we can connect about. So now let's talk more about why these cravings are so important. Because why are these cravings so important? Why am I here to talk about food cravings, and what is the deeper meaning behind this all? Well, there is no deeper meaning. I lied. I'm not here to talk about food cravings or how much I enjoy food, even though I very, very much enjoy food. Instead, I'm here to address an even bigger issue. I mean, food cravings are a very common part of life, but like anything else, there is a dark side to them. And for food cravings, there is a very dark side to them. Now, carefully formulated processed foods have been altered in a way to make sure that people like us, the customers, enjoy them, but also give the greedy companies profit. Now, how can these companies continue on with this continuous revenue and make sure that they continue this flow? By increasing consumerism and also by keeping their customers hooked onto these foods. And this will lead to a cycle of addiction and will harm us in the long run. Now, this whole idea is very concerning as more and more young teens have been turning to these unhealthy processed foods and eating them in an uncontrollable way. Let's take a closer look. Recent studies and alarming discoveries surround food that we crave most, processed foods. And these foods, like we know before, are high in fats, high in sugars, salts, and things like that. Now, these foods all have additives added. Now, how can companies create these foods with these addictive potentials? By meticulously calculating and balancing the salty and the sugariness of the food. Now, sugar is a very, very valuable ingredient when it comes to crafting the perfect craving. For example, it may take 5 Oreos instead of just stopping at 1 Oreo to realize that, oops, you've consumed 25 grams of sugar, which is more than 75% of the recommended daily sugar intake. And sugar addiction has been compared to addictions of nicotine or opioid, but sugar is 20 times faster at getting to the brain. And these cravings are always calculated with mathematical and scientific things like that, and these are really meticulously calculated to make sure that we crave these things. And of course, there are also different aspects involved, like the crunchiness of the food that signals freshness, or we can have the dissolvability, which is the speed at which you can start tasting the food, or, like I said before, the shapes and the aesthetics of the food. Now, why are we talking about this? Well, we need to know that these large companies, these greedy large companies, are trying to profit off of us. They have been continuously making these foods and engineering them in a way that makes us addicted. And there goes the cycle of eating, buying, and eating and buying. Now, let's talk more about this really scary and dark side phenomenon of food. So let's talk about what happens neurologically. So neurologically, when we eat our craving, we have this temporary feeling of happiness. And that sounds pretty great, right? I mean, it can cure a couple minutes of sadness here and there. Wouldn't you want that? However, that is not the case. Unfortunately, after consuming the craving, you're gonna have this episode of happiness, but then after that, oh boy, it goes downhill. It goes downhill, and you can experience even more unhappiness after your episode of happiness. That can lead to binge eating. And binge eating will make you feel that you want to keep eating and eating until you feel satisfied. But companies make sure that this feeling of satisfaction never happens. They make sure that the food is fulfilling, but not fulfilling enough to get you to stop. And there goes the cycle again of eating, buying, and buying more, giving the companies the profit that they want. Now, this whole idea, I hope you guys are all concerned about this idea right now, but it is important to address that whether or not these foods are tasting good or stuff, this is not just about temporarily satisfying our taste buds. Instead, companies are making it and they're intentionally calculating. This is meticulous calculations to make sure that we are addicted to these foods. And why am I here to talk about this? I want to spread awareness. I want to spread awareness to all of you out here who may be unknowing to the extent at which these foods are manipulated to make you crave these foods. And as we all know, awareness is the first step in addressing bad habits that we have and breaking the cycle of addiction. We must regain control of our health and our well-being before it's too late. I hope you guys enjoy the snacks in the intermission, but remember, keep this in mind because you don't want these manipulations that these fast food or these companies are using against you. So just make sure you keep this in mind. Thank you so much.